Hackmania.com, promo code WATP. We're going to be in Las Vegas May 9th through 11th. I'll be there May 8th. Come down a day early. Hang out with us. We're going to have a blast. Live podcasts. Maybe Nick or Kato will be there. We don't know. But come down. Check out Hackmania.com for more information.
Who are these podcasts? WATP.
Howard's back from the holiday break, and he comes on the radio after 2 weeks off. And this is how, have you heard any of this yet, Adam?
I have not. No.
Oh, good. This is how it starts.
Yeah, thrilling to be back. Thrilling. I've been doing this a long time. I'm somewhat jaded, I guess.
Jaded in what sense?
In the sense that I'm no longer captivated by the microphone now that everyone has one in their basement. So, the idea of, everybody having access to my job is a little annoying and doesn't exactly get me. I wasn't excited about the job beforehand, and now I'm really not excited. You know what I mean? It's like ruined everything.
So Howard's very upset about podcasters and podcasting. And this continues on. He's actually more upset now than he's ever been. And we'll get into the reasons for that. But it is interesting that you have this guy, Howard Stern, worked so hard to get to where he is in life and in show business. And now he makes more money than just about anyone. I mean, there's a very short list of broadcasters who are making more money than Howard Stern. It might not exist. There might not even be a list. I don't know. And yet he's talking to way fewer people than the most successful broadcasters right now. Because YouTube channels have way more listeners than SiriusXM. So it's a weird thing, right? Like, he wants to have this huge audience and he wants to have this influence, but instead he took the paycheck. And I'm not saying he made the wrong decision. He's obviously not happy, but
this is the first time I've ever seen something similar between John and Howard, which is John gets very upset that he's trying to throw an event and people he didn't invite show up to this event and ask him wacky questions and try and embarrass him. Right. And he can't understand the audacity. When Howard was first starting out, he made a movie about how those people felt about him coming into their industry with his completely different take and his young attitude, doing things that had never been done, trying to make it feel like it was somebody's basement. Like, that's how they felt about you, Howard, how you sound. You don't see any, even if you don't like the medium, even if you think it sounds shitty, you don't see any talent out there. You don't see anyone worth having on. I remember that he had those two guys that asked questions at the Bro Boys.
Yeah, love those guys.
And I was like, someone there's looking at the internet, and then I think that stopped, didn't it? That never.
Yeah, no,
like
I loved those guys when they were on there. Well, there's one podcaster that is really grinding his gears.
But there is a certain disappointment when I come back and I have the same job as Haktua Girl. You know what I mean?
Well, at least you know how to do it so you don't get in trouble.
If I was a medical doctor, like Haktua couldn't have access to that career,
Okay, good point. And it is true that Haley Welch was just on a viral video, and next thing you know, she's working for the Paul brothers. And I would say she probably has more viewers and listeners than Howard. If not, she probably has the viewers and listeners that are more attractive to advertisers because they have more buying power and they're younger and they're doing stuff with their lives. Where Howard's show is like all older women now who also have Trump derangement syndrome and are afraid of the outside world. Like, those people who relate to Howard at this point. So he's all upset that Haley Welch, and I get it. Like, I don't think Haley Welch is a super talent.
No, that's why she's not threatening. However, Howard knows better than anyone. He was at the forefront of becoming the story, not just reporting on it, but being it, making the story that John showed up and caused this thing, making it that fart man, whatever it is. He understood that. So why is he pretending to not understand, like, this Haktua girl is in the news consistently, and the fact that that crypto scandal happened and all of these other things, that she's the story. People are tuning in not to hear her interview and her banter with Whitney. It's the story, it's happening, so they just want to be a part of it. He's still striving for that, and I think he's just jealous of it.
Yes. Oh, there's definitely jealousy going on, and we're going to hear more about that. But Howard realizes he's no longer relevant. I don't think, you're alluding to the fact that Howard doesn't realize the similarities and Howard's, I think he does. I think that's what's bothering him, is that it's not him anymore, that he's aged out of that.
Depressing to me that everyone I run into in show business that used to kiss my ass because I had the keys to the kingdom. I was the one, if you wanted to get and reach, if you want to get on the air and reach an audience and talk in a way that was provocative and open and honest, you had to come here. Now you just go over to your neighbor's house and sit down in his kitchen and he puts on a microphone, and the next thing you know, you got a few 100,000 people watching the interview. So
no,
or you go down to your own basement. You can start your own.
Yeah, what do I need Howard Stern for? I'll just put a sign outside my house. Whoever walks by, I'll interview him.
Robin cracks herself up.
I know it by repeating the exact same point.
Yeah, no, it was the same point he's making. Adam,
I
you
couldn't
wanted
tell
to
if
jump
it was
in
a
there.
subtle dig against him, where she was like, "Go down in your basement and record your
He's
show."
He's literally in his basement right now in New York doing this show and complaining about people having their own studio set up in their houses.
And Howard talks about talent, and he skipped that part. He went to, you just turn on your camera and your microphone, you start recording, and then the millions of people just start showing up because you did it. No, you've described how hard it is. I work on a show right now that skewers to younger people, and a lot of the guest stars are TikTokers and YouTubers, and I meet them, and they're in big roles.
Yeah.
And I have been doing this since I was a kid. I know everything going on set. They don't know anything. They don't know where the mark is. They've never done this before. They didn't have to go the route of auditioning and self-tapes. They just set up a camera, put it up. What they have is talent, and they're really funny. So when I'm confronted with them, I'm not bitter that they didn't have to work their way up and get an agent and sell a self-tape. I'm like, God, you're funny. How do I tap into your sense of humor and be more like that? That's it. There's nothing to be threatened of.
And what's the show that you're talking about? People can find you.
Well, it's called PBC, and it's coming out right here on YouTube. That means paid by client. It is about accountants, and it's very much like The Office.
And features people from The Office as well.
It sure
And
does.
other
People from The
familiar
Office,
faces.
and Danny Trejo, and people from Saturday Night Live. Danny Trejo plays our janitor.
That's awesome. And, I was just thinking as you were saying that of Trisha Paytas showing up on SNL in a skit. And you mentioned these people have talent. What about Trisha Paytas? How do you explain that one?
It's very similar to John, right? She's reactionary. She has to respond. She has to react. She has no, sense of self-awareness. However, she seems to be playing the game a lot better.
No, she has. And something that Howard said right there reminded me very much of Opie. This has been Opie's complaint for a while now. When I had the big chair, when I had the big microphone, everyone was kissing my ass. Everyone wanted to get on the show. All the comics were kissing my ass. And now that I've fallen this far, no one wants to talk to me anymore. Now, Howard doesn't have that problem. He's still going to these celebrity parties, which is what he's describing right now. He was at some New Year's party where everyone's got their own podcast, and he's jealous that everyone has a bigger audience than he does, which he's like, no, I'm the radio guy. It's like, yeah, we don't care about that anymore. But Opie, on the other hand, describes the same thing, but Opie has lost all of his friendships as well. And so his only connections with people were based on him having that chair and that microphone in front of him. But it is an interesting parallel to see these two guys who despise each other to this day have this similar issue where they're like, fuck, I wish I had that power back again.
They're going to end up at the same support group.
Oh, yeah. Hi, my name's Greg Hughes. You look familiar, Greg. All right, so I'm glad you didn't listen to this, Adam, because this is a brand new episode, and we're right back to the same old shit. The problem with Howard, in my opinion, he doesn't live a life. And he's an older man. I'm not saying he needs to go out every night or anything like that. But when he was going out to scores and he was doing stuff, he had shit to talk about. Now he's still doing when I was growing up, my dad didn't nurture my talent and told me I was stupid and I was never going to amount to anything.
If he could throw me a bone and give me something positive to think about, that I could possibly feel good about myself. I don't know how I'm not in a mental institution, honestly. I've said that to my wife. I go, I'm barely holding on. I'm in that therapy 2-3 times a week. I can't get better.
So I got to be honest. I don't know anything about psychotherapy. I've not been in it myself. And so I'm talking completely out of my ass. but just observing Howard for the last 3 or 4 decades, it's bad for him because he can't let go of daddy issues. I don't know. The therapist is telling him to keep holding on to this shit. His dad is dead. Move on. I realize he told you were dumb and you wouldn't amount to shit in radio. Guess what? Nana to dad, you win. Get over it. Move on. His dad was very proud and supportive of him throughout his entire career. They're in the movie and everything. Like, well, not the real parents, but you know what I mean. It's ridiculous. Why is he still holding on to this dad thing?
I always say, imagine how he'd be if he wasn't going to therapy. He might just be rolling on the floor like a dog. He might just be
maybe
unable to stand up straight. I don't know.
I can't see it being worse, but yeah.
He needs a different therapist, and it's a little strange to think that he was at that New Year's party, and as a 70-year-old man, he didn't think for a second, like, I wonder what they think is funny. Like, it does change.
Right.
Maybe tap into or be a little curious as an artist about what they're talking about. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's stuck in, again, this like Piano Man, Billy Joel thing, where as soon as it started, I could have told you what he was going to say. He was going to say, I don't want to be here. That's his bit, which is pretty fucking cool when you're on the biggest radio show in the world and you're young and you're going to rock concerts and you're so badass that you're Eddie Van Halen at Nassau Coliseum going, I'm tired. I wish I could just go to sleep. You're like, that's so fucking cool. And so the opposite, right, of morning drive radio, which is hitting you with all this energy. It's such a nice, break for someone to just be real for a second. But when you're 70 and you're in your basement and you sound tired and your lips are smacking and you just sound like a tired old man. And it makes us go, well, then just go to bed. Go to bed. It's okay.
Yeah. We have other options, as you've been pointing out all morning. We have other things that we can be listening to. People are excited to talk to us about.
That is a good point. He's at this New Year's Eve party with younger people.
Yep.
Adam said, could be tapping in, learning. When we were listening to the audio of him hosting his own party with all the celebs, he was making everyone listen to Hotel California.
Remember that?
Yeah. So he is completely living in the past.
Yes. Completely out of touch. Well, I guess he visited with his mom over the break. Here's some more Howard Stern greatest hits.
Yeah, it's so great. What a great childhood. My mother, I went to see her yesterday and spending the day with her. We had a good time in that house when you were growing up. I go, you had a good time. You didn't have a good time? And then she goes, yeah, what do you mean we, white woman?
I don't know how Robin does this. She's earning her paycheck at this point. Because I would just have to be like, yeah, Howard, we know. And also, this conversation didn't happen. His mom is complete. It's dementia. They're not having these conversations. I'm glad he's still visiting her. That's great. But this is the conversation you've been talking about for 35 years. Like, all right, move on. Do something else. It's time.
He might just be making all this up.
He could be just making it up because it's all the same stuff. I mean, I could, if you said, Carl, host what you think the Howard Stern show would be on January 6th. This is what I would do too. I don't want to be here, Robin. My dad told me I would never mount anything. My mom, I was visiting with her. She thought I had a good upbringing. I didn't.
Therapy is at least like, going to the gym with a coach. Like, you'd know how many days you do it. You'd be like, I go 3 days a week. I go 2 or 3. It felt very John again. Like, what?
Ooh, you're right.
I think he's just saying, I'm trying to do all this stuff and without changing anything I do or think or feel, and nothing's working.
That's
what
a good point. Yeah, he doesn't really, you never hear him make strides to be like, all right, I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone. I'm trying to do this thing. Whenever he does do something, it's because Beth wants him to do it and kind of like nags him into doing stuff he doesn't want to do. And he's brought up before, he doesn't want to be Howard Hughes. And he recognized that in himself. He's just like, if I was left to my own devices, I would never leave my mansion. I'd probably never leave 3 rooms from my mansion. I would just go to these 3 rooms for the rest of my life and no one would ever see me again. So he recognizes that he needs Beth, but he never really tries to do something. Like you would think the therapist would say, Howard, let's get you out of this rut. Let's try something new. All right, so Howard is pissed from the celebrity party that he went to.
Just like I went to a party. I know. I went to a party. My wife made me, well, look, not made me go. I mean, I enjoyed it. I wanted to celebrate my friend. But I went to a party, and like 90% of the people in the room had some sort of microphone that they talked into. You know what I mean? They, like everybody else was like, oh, I'll do your podcast. You want to do my podcast? I'll do, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, I have a radio show. Radio show. Excuse me,
let's
did I just
change
hear radio?
cards. You should be on my show, and I'll do your show.
So this is what's really the problem here. Is that I can even imagine who these people are. The guys from Smartless are there, or, who knows? These shows that are huge. Dax Shepard, I don't know. I don't know who he's hanging out with, but these are the celebrities that Beth wants to hang around with. And they have podcasts that have way more reach than Howard does anymore. And Howard's always been too good to go on other people's shows. So he even says at one point, I didn't pull the clip, where it's like, a guy comes to me and goes, hey, do you want me to do your show? And I'm like, no. Because Howard's upset that there's other people who are broadcasting and doing well. And so he goes on to explain things were different in his day.
Well, I remember Letterman would have me on, and it was a big deal, and millions of my fans would watch because, nobody had access to the airwaves. The only people who had access to the airwaves back then were professional announcers, the guys with the hello, everybody, and now here's the news. The guys with the deep voices and the excellent articulation.
And that was the clip right there, Adam. You got there before I did.
Mm-hmm.
That was the clip right there where I went, yeah, Howard, you paved the way for all of this. You were the guy who didn't have the conventional radio voice. This is what your dad told you. You can't be on the radio. You don't sound right for that. You need a certain type of delivery and cadence, and you didn't have that. And Howard came on and made it so any guy, a schmuck like me, could burp into a microphone. And if I have compelling enough stories or if I'm laughing at the right jerks, people will listen along. And you would think, and I actually heard Tukey saying this on his show because he just got a trial serious. And so he's listening to it again. You would think Howard would be on and be proud of this. He's kind of the godfather of podcasting. A lot of people give Opie and Anthony credit because of the way they have comedians in, they all just kind of do a round robin, shoot the shit kind of thing. But when you really think about amateurs, and I realized Howard went to school for broadcasting and everything like that. I got his degree. But Howard was really the guy who said, I'm changing all the rules. I'm not playing by the rules of radio, and let's see what happens. Maybe people will find that compelling. And they did. And he talks about all the copycats and all the people who tried to do what he did on the radio. And now you have this huge new industry that's cropped up with YouTube and Spotify and all of these people who are doing this shit on their own, DIY. And most of us listened to Howard when we were younger. And he was a huge influence on what we do. And he's still bitter about it. Could you imagine if Mickey Mantle was just yeah, all right, well, yeah, try hitting 56 home runs when, people are throwing curveballs the way they used to do in my day. That's not the point. These people
he's also acting like he's some old forgotten folk singer that, only the legends know and didn't get the money and respect that he deserves. He rode this out. He lasted. He didn't get canceled. He got the deal. At this age, he won, and everyone pays respects. No one's erasing his story. He is even more so because of the competition show that he hosted. He is a name brand. There's a Howard Stern and a Dolly Parton, and they both represent different sides of the same coin, and everyone respects him. So what is the bitterness about? You're invited to the big Hollywood party. What is the bitterness about?
That's a great point. I didn't even think about that. He's not a blues singer that Zeppelin ripped off.
That's what I'm trying to say.
You know what I mean? It's just there are guys who influenced pop culture and influenced the greatest rock bands in the world who are forgotten. No one knows their name.
You got to tell people about Townes Van Zandt, and they're like, who? And you're like, right. That's all of your favorite songwriter's favorite songwriter, right?
Right. Instead, we have a guy that is the name of radio and this style of broadcasting. He's the Kleenex of broadcasting.
And he has the mass appeal of a Halloween mask. Kids recognize the, Ramon's outline as him. Right. He owns that shadow like Hitchcock does. And it's still not enough. And that's why he goes to therapy so many times a week. Because he's like, this stuff was supposed to make me happy and it doesn't. What am I supposed to do? And they're like,
get a hot wife?
You got to come back tomorrow.
Yeah. They're like, I tried that. All right. Yeah. Well, I'm all out of ideas.
I don't know what to tell you.
So Mark the Bagger calls into the show. And I didn't find this all that interesting. I don't really have clips of it. But Mark the Bagger is talking about Nikki Glaser was on Golden Globes the night before. And he's talking about how he was jerking off watching Nikki Glaser on there. If you don't know who Mark the Bagger is, he's a whack packer. But he was originally found by the Bloodhound Gang.
Oh.
And the Bloodhound Gang brought him to the Howard Stern show. And they went on Stern show. And then Mark the Bagger kind of became a whack packer for the Stern show. He's also done stuff with Bam, and he's bounced around.
And even then, John reacted the way that Howard does to these podcasts. He was like, who are these guys that think they're funny and making pop music? It's just not that great. Just kind of a gimmick, isn't it? It's not really real music. He was so bitter about it.
So while they're trying to wrap up with Mark the Bagger, we get this thing that we've been seeing ever since COVID, where someone knocks on the door. And, we had to let this person in who's knocking on the door.
Well, listen, buddy, I'm so glad that you called in, and you were a big hit in 2024. I hope the same... gee whiz. Let me see who's here, Mark. Hold on a second. Oh, it's Mark the Bagger impersonator. Hi, Mark.
Oh.
Yes, help, I'm stuck to my chair. Call a fire department. I need the jaws of life. Get me out of my chair. Yes.
What happened? Your penis, when you came, your penis somehow, and then the fabric all merged into one?
Yes. Now I'm stuck.
That's terrific. That's terrific.
We all understood what the point of that stuck to the chair thing was. It's like, no, you're talking about how you ejaculated and then your ejaculate sticky and then it dry. Yeah, yes, Howard, yes, we got it. It's so bad.
And it's the same Robert Kennedy impression they've been using for everyone.
Okay, so this is, Howard's complaining about how he's a pro and all these amateurs are doing shows. Let's see what kind of a pro Howard is in 2025.
I don't think there's a bigger fan on the planet of Nikki Glaser than you, honestly. Both of you guys. You both love her so much.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was waiting for, that other yes.
Now.
And Mark, you know the laws and everything.
Great stuff, Howard. You're killing it over there. Wow. That's going to be a staff meeting.
It would have been a little easier if they were in the same room together. Just a little.
You think? Yeah, no shit. They're all on Zoom calls and stuff. Doesn't make it easy. All right, so I'm calling this one, Howard, it's your time to call it. It's time to go. I don't want to be Zoomakian on this. I don't want to sound like Chad, but it's over.
You're done.
This job's getting to be a bit much for me, which was my whole point. Now it's 2025. I don't watch the news anymore. So quite frankly, I don't even know what's going on. I don't read the paper. It's too upsetting. And by paper, I mean, I don't read a physical paper. But I call it the paper because I'm old. And, yeah. But I don't know what's going on in the news. And I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to know. 2025 is the year of Howard Stern. You'll call in and go, hey, Howard, did you hear about it? I go, no, I don't hear about anything. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I'm sitting in my basement.
Sounds like a farewell speech.
Yeah, this is a fuck you to Sirius and all the employees there who, shareholders, they're paying him so much fucking money. And he's like, I can't even be bothered to keep up with what's going on in the world. So this is what you get. I'm going to talk to Mark the Bagger about jerking off. And, yep, that's it.
And I wouldn't even consider listening to the news. Who the hell does that? I read it. That's what I do. I read it.
He's like, I'm not going to pay attention to the news. He's still upset Trump was elected. And Rob isn't paying attention. It's not like Rob is going to be there going, oh my gosh, you see what happened today? She has no idea. So you have two hosts who are completely out of it, declaring that they're out of it, daring you to listen to their show.
You saw where the self-reflection ended. He was like, and I started thinking to myself, like, what can I do about this? I can stick my head in the sand. That's what I can do. And that's where it just ended.
I need to bury my head deeper, actually. I'm just going to throw some more topsoil on top and see what happens.
I'll help you, Howard.
All right, so this is really the crux of it. This is what we're getting to here.
And then I struggle. I claw my way to the top of the radio broadcast empire. And then they change the rules. Everybody's got a fucking microphone. I go to a party. I can't meet one person. They give me a card. Hey, here's my show. I got a show. Everyone's got a fucking show.
It's not fair. It's just I worked so hard. I went to Connecticut, then I went to Detroit, and then Washington. It's just not fair, guys. Get over it. It's time to get over it, Howard. You've been crying about podcasters and podcasting for years now.
It really is a natural evolution from, like he said, you used to have a deep voice and be professional. You used to have to wear a suit. he came in with his ripped jeans. He wanted everyone to have long hair. And then it changed and it started going back. No, now I want everyone to wear suits, actually. And I want people to have a deep voice and raise that bass up for me. I used to say as a joke, when somebody mentioned Facebook, I would call it the Facebook because I thought that was silly. I know it's Facebook. It took me a while to realize I'm at the age where no one thinks I'm kidding.
Right,
and that's not funny. They just think I'm saying it wrong.
Just out of it, right.
Right. Howard hasn't had that epiphany yet that he's having about the news and the paper of that these two camps exist and that the point of life is not to prevent progress or drag them all to my side. Now is your time to go with it and pay it back to those rebels and people that weren't doing it the way that the establishment was doing it. Yes, you dressed differently. Well, now the location is different and looks different. We don't want it to look like a corporate office. We want it to look like a basement, which is how you set up your K-Rock studio to look like a band's rehearsal studio. You didn't want it to look like, CNN. So now you have no tolerance for these same things going on, and it's just a blind spot, I guess.
Well, he's also a phony. And, what it comes down to is Howard was always the free speech guy, but then he wants to censor other people. And when challenged with that, he goes, yeah, I just want my free speech. Like Howard literally said that. And you're just like, oh, I thought we were all in this together. Like, fuck the FCC. I was a big Howard guy. Like, yeah, why are we censoring people? Like, it's free speech. It's the First Amendment. It turns out Howard never believed in any of this shit. He doesn't give a fuck. And this is more evidence of that this rebel, that was just his way of getting in and getting famous and eventually getting invited to the Jimmy Kimmel parties. That's all this was.
He must only be happy when he has an enemy. And now that he's won so completely and totally, he's run out of enemies, so he's creating straw ones.
Yeah. Yeah, because he goes after like Joe Rogan and stuff, and Joe Rogan's just like, oh, I love Howard Stern. He's a big influence. Like, I don't have a problem with Howard Stern. It's not like Joe Rogan's just like, yeah, fuck Howard. That's how I'm going to get famous and get a Spotify deal by going after Howard Stern. Like, everyone's just like, yeah, no, we all love you, and we all thought you were great, and we grew up on you.
Howard being threatened by Joe Rogan is so silly. They're so different content-wise, but so similar in just delivery and professionalism. The fact that he can't make that work shows you that there's limitations.
Well, I want to thank my buddy Mike, who still listens pretty regularly to Howard Stern, for pointing out that Howard started off the new year complaining about podcasting. But he also said, you got to bring this in for Adam because his guest on the show was Nikki Glaser. Fresh off of her appearance hosting the Golden Globes. And when I say fresh, I mean fresh.
Hi, Nikki. How are you, by the way?
Hi, Howard. Hi, Robin.
I'm
so glad to be here.
Have you been asleep yet?
An hour.
Really?
It's good enough. Yeah, it's adrenaline.
So she hosted the Golden Globes. Now she has to get up for a show that's out of New York and go to the SiriusXM studios in LA. She even mentions she had to get up at 3:30 for this. This is some obligation to have. You're on national television and broadcast network television. And the Howard Stern show is like, all right, Nikki, we need you as our guest on Monday morning. And I think that Howard thinks that he owns a bit of Nikki's celebrity. He thinks he discovered her. Because Howard had Nikki on before she was as big as she is now. She was already a well-established comic. Howard's not finding gems in the rough anymore. It's not like a Bob Smigel. No, not Bob Smigel. Robert. Oh shit! I lost it now. Who was the comic he used to have on who was dating his daughter's friend, best friend, and then died of cancer? Anyway, he's not finding those types of people on his show anymore. But he thinks he has like this ownership over Nikki, so Nikki feels obligated to go on the show the next morning. And let's talk about Nikki's approach to writing for the Golden Globes.
There is no room for just like, we'll wing it, we'll see. It's even when I winged it and was, remembering it from memory, that joke was written over and over, and the wording was toiled over of, what was some of the wording that the joke where I said about Harrison Ford, I asked him backstage if he'd rather work with Zendaya or Ariana, and he told me Indica. And that we toiled over that because we were like, is sativa funny or Indica? And it was like a heated debate of which one was funnier. And it turns out it's like they're both funny, but I just thought Indica was fun. Like, I don't even know why I chose it in the end. I think we did a vote in the writer's room, but it was words like that were like just figuring out the phrasing. So many long discussions about how do we say the word sounded like twice. You say Timothy Chalamet sounded like, and then Bob Dylan said that he sounded like. We don't want to say sounded twice in the same sentence. Okay, that was like a 15-minute long conversation just to work on the wording.
I think she needs more sleep. No, I appreciate this glimpse into the process of this, but it's like we're getting way into the details here, getting real granular with how this all came together.
We got it at toiled.
Fair enough, yes. But this is Nikki on 1 hour of sleep. And there were after parties, of course, after the Golden Globes. And Nikki decided to go to one that wasn't so star-studded. She knew she had to get up early to go on Howard.
Party. I was invited to all of them. There was one for Universal. There was one for Netflix. There's one for, UTA, CAA, like all the things. And I was invited to all of them, and they were probably a lot more star-studded than mine. But this was the only one that I could get my family and my writers into. And also I was like, I got to be up at 3:30 for Stern, which I was like so glad that I had that because it was just an excuse not to have to go. And
did you do that move again where you bring your parents to the parties and everything? Why, Nikki, I'm going to suggest to you, why? I'm not going to, but why?
I love them.
You love them, but why can't you? Why do you have to give them all of that? Why can't you just have the night to be with your boyfriend and celebrate? And why do you have to schlep the parents?
No, because my boyfriend loves them. Like, we all love, like, we're a family. Like, there's no one else I'd rather hang out with. It's not even like I'm like, oh, I should do that because they've been great and supportive. Like, they're my friends. Like, I want to hang out with my parents. They're cool. Wow. They're funny.
Okay.
It's interesting to me, based on what we've been talking about with Howard, this seems like the most grounded thing you can do. Nikki is there. She's like, these are the people that I've been with my entire life, and I love them, and I want them to be a part of this life. And Howard's going, that's crazy. You should be hanging out with George Clooney. Like, what are you thinking with this? Ditch your parents and get with the A-listers. This is stupid. What is this therapist saying to him?
Howard, whatever you do, don't try and understand someone else's perspective.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's really bad at that. That is true. It's like, what are you doing? You're not trying to get as famous as possible?
He's just trying to be cool. He doesn't know what to say or what to do. He's trying to be like, and he sounds like John. Like, you weren't partying? What are you hanging out with your parents for? Be partying. She's clearly just a good person, Howard. She's a good person. And I'm willing to bet that when she was first on your show, even though she was established to some degree, she needed him and he didn't need her. And he had never heard of her, so it was a move he made. And then he fell in love with her talent and watched her get to the point she's at right now, where she no longer needs him at all. And this is a favor. And she's doing it because she believes that he helped her and he was loyal to her and she's loyal to him. She's doing what you're supposed to do, those things that John never does, where you pay back just a little bit. So now I'm finally at a place where I'm so busy, I have a good excuse to not do Howard. But I don't want to let him down. And I love the show and him. So I'm going to do it. The same reason she took her parents out. Because she seems to this is probably what keeps her funny and relatable. As opposed to living like a Howard Hughes in your Hamptons home.
Yeah. No, it's a really good point. I've certainly seen guys like Howard, Opie, all these guys complain like, oh, and now all of a sudden that they're famous, we don't hear from them anymore. Mm-hmm. And Nikki's doing the exact right thing. And she even kind of worked her schedule the day before around this appearance. And she wrote a bunch of jokes just for the Howard Stern show. They played on Who Are These Broadcasters with Christian and Eric yesterday. I'm not going to play those. But she likes to go on Howard Stern after a roast or after presenting at the Golden Globes and go, here's what didn't make the cut. Here's what we threw out. So she's totally doing a huge favor to Howard to do this.
And I hate to, hop on the same theme, but this is what John thought was going to happen when he left for I'm a Celebrity and left for Leno and came back. This is the kind of greeting he really, truly believed he was going to get. She was loyal, you betrayed and backstabbed and lied. She was honest and open. You hid and were deceitful.
She has real talent. You have none.
Oh, yeah, that. Right.
There's also that. Mm-hmm. You've compared Howard to John a couple of times now. You're going to land on Howard's shit list, Adam. You're not going to be invited to play in the band anymore.
Well, I'm not comparing him to Imus yet, and I'm letting the chat do that.
Yeah, the chat's all over that. Thank you, associate producer Ralph. I was thinking of Bob Schimmel was the comedian I was thinking of.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Who I wouldn't have known about Bob Schimmel, but he was on Howard all the time. And I used to go out and see him whenever he came to Rochester. Very funny comic. Okay, so Howard's very concerned about her not mingling with A-listers like he does.
I don't want to go to a party and talk to famous people who stress me out because they're so famous, and I feel like
who did you talk to at the party? Did you have fun at the party? Did you meet any famous people? Did you get to shake hands with anybody really famous?
I met the founder of Kind Bars came up to me and was like, we want to send you Kind Bars. And then there was a woman who's runs a media company in Egypt and asked me to come. And I think I saw Hugh Grant run through. My party was not star-studded. It was a great party, but there was not celebrities there.
What do you mean your party? You threw the party?
The party I went. No. The party I went to. The one that I went to, there were not celebrities there, except Hugh Grant. I saw run through, but I don't.
Why would you go to a party where there's no celebrities? To me, that would be
because I just wanted to.
That's very telling, right there. Why would you go to a party where there's no celebrities? Why would you do anything if it doesn't benefit you to be around famous people? You can network.
She just explained it to you because it stresses her out.
Yes.
And then she tried to move on. You're like, no, we're going to dig in. And then he at least didn't press her about who was throwing the party because she obviously didn't want to throw them under the bus, but he almost did it. He was almost like, oh, which party did you say was shitty? And then she had to answer.
Yeah, good point. Which party doesn't get any A-listers at it so we can make that a note for next year? But it's almost like, and I'm not the biggest Nikki Glaser fan. I think she's very funny, and she's doing very well for her career. She's not great on Thursday Night Football. I'd lose that the next year if I were her, but whatever. But it's almost like she doesn't want to be ruined by celebrity like Howard has been. And she's sitting there going, as soon as you become tight with all these types of people, you can't be you anymore. You can't tell the same jokes. You have to toe the company line. It's like, that's not good for comics to get in with the in crowd in Hollywood. So I give her credit for that. And she's just not superficial, I guess.
I was so exhausted. I just wanted to hang out with people that I could be myself around and not have to be like, I love you. Like, it's exhausting for me to be around people that I admire because but
the person from Kind Bar is who you want to be around?
Well, I mean, I didn't want to be. No, not that I did. He was very nice, but I left pretty quickly after because it just became a lot of people coming up to me and everyone
so you
was
went
really
to
nice.
this, Nikki, you went to this big Hollywood. You went to this big Hollywood event, and you didn't. So you don't have a story where you met Harrison Ford or you met Demi Moore.
I met Harrison Ford backstage. I saw Demi Moore backstage. I got to all the interactions that I wanted to kind of backstage, and I would have thought that that was the reason I got into this career was to be friends and hang out with famous people, but it is not interesting to me unless it's a setting in which maybe we could get to know each other. And I just at a loud party screaming and they're tired, they're hungry, we're all in tight dresses. It's just not the setting. We're not going to
right.
It's not going to be real.
I really appreciated this answer because Howard's all about having superficial friends. I think Beth is probably leans on this pretty heavily too. She wants those big celebrity friends that they go to dinner parties and they have them over and then they go to Jimmy Kimmel's house and they all have these parties and none of it's very real. I'm just speculating. I'm not at these parties. I don't know what's going on. But none of it's very real. And so when you're at a party with loud music and stuff, you're not going to make this connection with Denzel Washington and all of a sudden we're BFFs or something like that. And I appreciate that Nikki sees that. She goes, they invited me to their big party that was the TV show. That's good. I did it. They liked me. I'll probably be back again next year. Says that a couple of times. She's like, I'm assuming I'll get more money next year when I do this because, Joe Coy made it so it was a little bit easier for her. That's how much he bombed the year before. I love Joe Coy, but and I didn't watch the show. From what I hear, she did a better job. But it's interesting that the way Howard looks at, I almost said John, I almost was like Adam just now. The way Howard looks at this is all transactional.
Yeah, he was also... Howard was the only one laughing at his own joke earlier, so there's another John
yeah,
thing.
very much like John. But it's a very transactional. Here's your opportunity. These are these people. They can do things for you. Why aren't you there? Networking and getting the stuff that they can do for you. And Nikki's going, I don't need any of that stuff. I do my own thing. I got it. I'm happy.
Which is how almost every real comic talks and is, you know, and every band member. When you're not a celebrity, you're a band member. You know, the band and the wait staff hang out together. The comics and the cleaning crew hang out together because they're the ones smoking or doing drugs or drinking or just they're serving at the service of all of these other people in the room. And I bet she truly feels more of a connection with the people working that event than the celebrities attending. And I bet she'd be more comfortable with them. I really do.
Yeah. Well, and she says that straight on. And she also explains that not for nothing, I couldn't go out partying all night because of this.
It's good for a story. And there was a part of me like, I'm going on Stern. I should go to a party to get some like stories. I mean, honestly, that was
right.
But then I was like, no.
Yeah. It's like, no, I don't need to do that. I have to get up at 3:30 in the morning to go on Stern. And I feel like hosting the show is probably enough stories to tell. She came with jokes. She came prepared. She came with all the stuff. But I just thought that was interesting. Howard's perspective on how to take advantage of all these Hollywood celebs and Nikki's very different. And it's very telling. I'm rooting for Nikki. I think she's doing the right thing.
Yeah, I also want to add, it was so funny because Howard was coming at it as if they were the same person. You know, there's always a hierarchy in all of these things that she is correct to point out that even exists within the party. You get to the party with the celebrities, and you're like, where are they? Like, oh, they're upstairs. Right. Well, how do I get upstairs? Well, that's a separate, you know, Howard comes in, and for many different reasons, height being one of them, it is an attraction. And he's an A-lister who doesn't come to LA very often, and people are introducing him. Like, very, you know, it's very formal. It's not the same when you're an attractive blonde comic. And she even alluded to that, and Howard just skipped it. He's like, you know, then it gets late, and they get drunk, and things get weird.
Yes.
Well, I'd love to talk more about that. And if you weren't laughing at your own joke, you might have heard her say that.
Right.
Because that's a real thing she's trying to talk about that you're claiming to be concerned with politically.
They do talk a little bit about guys hitting on her, and she does talk about that. I mean, she also talks about how she's had a boyfriend for 10 years, and he actually worked on the show because he's in live TV broadcasting. So I don't think but yes, to your point, she goes to one of these celebrity parties. There's going to be a Leonardo DiCaprio or someone. She's too old for him, but you know what I mean. It's going to be Robert De Niro, you know, someone that's more in her age.
I don't think Mr. and Mrs. Kindbar are making their way to Howard and Beth. I don't think they're going to.
Correct.
Who are these podcasts?